Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'll be presenting a study on relating oneself to others in time and space, a relational frame theory account of perspective taking and theory of mind in autism. And theory of mind, or the ability to ascribe mental states such as intentions, beliefs, and emotions to others and to oneself, is often thought to be quite central in successful social interactions and has been linked to difficulties in autism, stating that their social difficulties actually stem from difficulties in theory of mind. However, the causes of theory of mind remain largely unclear. And there's one theory, relational frame theory, that has a bit of a different perspective on theory of mind, stating that relating is at the core of theory of mind and perspective taking. So what's relational frame theory and what's relating? Relational frame theory is a general learning theory stating that relating is the central building block of human cognition. And this theory focuses on our human ability to very quickly learn relations between apparently meaningless stimuli and to derive very different types of relations. For example, at one point in your life, you've probably learned that this coin with a 5 on it is actually worth less than a coin with a 1 on it. And that 5 times a coin with a 1 on it is the same as a bill with a 5 on it, which is then again different to the coin with a 5 on it. And these different relations, like different to, same as, or less or more than, they're called frames by relational frame theory. And according to this theory, we learn about the world around us through these different frames. There's one frame in particular, the dyactic frame, that relational frame theory thinks is quite central to theory of mind and perspective taking. And these are relations that depend on a person's perspective. They're about the relation between you and I, but also about being in the now versus being in the past, and being here versus being somewhere else. And these depend on a person's perspective because my here right now is different from my here yesterday, which is different from your here yesterday. So these relations really change in meaning based on a person's perspective and context. According to relational frame theory, we learn this dyactic relating throughout development by being asked questions by parents or caretakers like, what did you learn at school this morning? Or what's your sister doing over there? And by repeatedly being asked and answering these questions, children learn to relate themselves to others in time and space. This ability becomes rather complex when you start including a switch in perspective. And here you can start seeing that link with theory of mind a little bit more intuitively. For example, one of those switches is, if I were you and you were me, then you would be giving the stock and I would hopefully be listening. But dyactic frames also include other types of switches, like if now were yesterday and yesterday were now, the temporal switch, or a spatial one. If here were there and there were here, then. And according to relational frame theory, people with autism have difficulties with this dyactic framing and with making the switch, which would then explain their theory of mind difficulties. And based on that assumption, they have developed different training studies to try and improve dyactic relating in individuals with autism. However, is dyactic framing actually different in autism? If we look into the literature, we see that there are actually no well-powered studies actually investigating this claim. Most studies focus on training these abilities in very limited samples of about 5 participants. So we actually tried to answer this question as a first step in this study. Our research question was, are autism traits related to performance on dyactic relating? And we investigated this using an online study on Prolific, in which we measured performance on dyactic relating on the one hand, and autism traits on the other hand, in a general population. So we didn't include any individuals with autism yet, or not on purpose. For this study, we reused data from a previous study in our lab, in which 150 individuals completed the Relational Abilities Index. The Relational Abilities Index is just a general assessment of relational responding developed by these RFT researchers, which include different subskills, each measuring one type of relational framing. And on the slide here, you can see one trial in the dyactic framing subskill. So participants always read 2 sentences about non-words. Love is here now, fog was there then. They then learn about the switch that has to be made. If here was there and there was here, and love is fog and fog was love. And then they have to select true or false statements from a number of buttons. And that way we can actually measure how accurate or how well they perform on dyactic on dialectic relating. We invited the same participants to complete a second part in which they completed 2 autism questionnaires, the Autism Spectrum Quotient and a newer one, the Comprehensive Autistic Trait Inventory. We expected to find a negative correlation between autism traits as measured by the AQ and the CATI and accuracy on the didactic subskills, as relational frame theory would predict more autism traits would relate to a lower performance on the didactic subscale. For the other subscales, we didn't really have a specific hypothesis. It could be that the relation between didactic relating and autism traits is quite specific. In that case, we wouldn't find any negative correlations with other types of relational framing. However, it's also possible that differences with didactic framing actually stem from general differences in relating. And in that case, we would expect to find a negative correlation with different subscales of the RAI. We investigated this in 134 participants who completed both parts, and we just estimated correlations between accuracy scores on those RAI subscales and the scores on the AQ and the CATI. So what did we find? First of all, although we had quite good variance in those AQ scores, with about 15 participants actually scoring above the clinical cutoff, we did not find any correlation with didactic relating. The same was true for the CATI, so CATI scores did not correlate with didactic relating at all. So in this case, autism traits are unrelated to performance on the didactic subscale. We found the same thing for all the other RAI subscales. So based on this study, we could conclude that autism traits did not correlate with performance on didactic relating or any other relational frames in a general population. This kind of speaks against what RFT proposed, but needs further investigation. Thank you for your attention. If there are any questions, I would be more than happy to try and answer them.